Hi, and welcome to Creating Your Own Content with Troy Osborne Pryor. My name is Heather Nice, and I'm the Director of Education at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library Museum. During this session, I will be your moderator. We're offering this expert session to you as part of the No Malice Film Contest, a contest created in partnership with the Roger and Chaz Ebert Foundation and the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library Foundation. The contest invites Illinois youth and young adults to create short films addressing topics of racial healing. To learn more about the contest and see the complete rules, visit bit.ly/No Malice Film Contest. Before we move on, I'd like to take a minute to hand it over to Chaz Ebert.
Good morning. I'm Chaz Ebert from the Roger and Chaz Ebert Foundation, and I want to welcome you and thank you so much for joining us this morning for our first workshop in the series. Our contest, as Heather mentioned, is about racial healing. I think that there are principles in this society that are so important: empathy, kindness, compassion, forgiveness, equality, love. These are all things that I think are worth sharing, and I'm hoping that your films will help us do that. Thank you. I'm going to hand it back over to Heather.
Thank you, Chaz, for the hard work you put into making these sessions possible. I'd also like to thank our funders, Healing Illinois. Healing Illinois is a racial healing initiative of the Illinois Department of Human Services in partnership with the Chicago Community Trust. Now, because I know you're really here to learn from an expert, I'd like to introduce Troy Osborne Pryor. Troy is an American producer, host, and actor. His stage, on camera, and voiceover work has led to award-winning content on multiple platforms, including collaborations with ABC, Warner Brothers, HGTV, DIY Network, TV One, and Aspire TV. A Chicago native, Troy is an advocate for connecting local, undiscovered, diverse talent to mainstream content and media platforms through his production network, Creative Cipher. Pryor established Pryor Holdings in 2012 to include the brands Troy Pryor Studios, Creative Cipher, Cipher Foundation, BLACC, and Dark Berry Productions. This ecosystem aggregates hundreds of artists, connecting them to the resources and tools that enable new content production for major brands. Through these production deals, Troy aims to support the expansion of Chicago's multi-million-dollar creative community footprint globally. As Troy shares his content, if you have any questions, be sure to enter them into the Q&A box so we can get to them during and after the presentation. Troy, it's all yours.
Thanks so much for that warm introduction. Thank you so much, Chaz, for inviting me to speak. Thank you so much to both of the organizations, Heather, Angela, for helping bring this together. I'm grateful to share a little bit of information or knowledge that I may have acquired over the past couple of years, and hopefully there's some things that you can find and pull out and apply to your own life. One of the things I always talk about is that there is no one way, there's no one journey, there is no one specific blueprint. Everyone has their own path, everyone has their own journey. And so, as an instructor, as a teacher, what we always want to promote are options, are ideas, things that can cause you to think, but never restricting you to say, do it this way, this is going to happen. We work in an entertainment industry that can is never just a cookie cutter, so to speak, in a variety of ways. There are nuances to different things. So today, I set up a presentation that covers a broad stroke of this idea of creating your own content. And we're going to talk about not only some of the logistics behind the actual producing of your content, but also your ethos, or the why behind why we create content, why it is important to leverage your voice and express yourself as an artist through different mediums. So with that being said, I'm going to pull up our screen and we're going to get going. And as it was stated earlier, I'll take some brief pauses in between. If there are any questions, and they'll feed those over, feel free to ask any questions at any point in time, and we will we will tactfully address all of those. All right. So I like to start off with this phrase, create, don't wait. I actually learned this from a fellow Chicago actor and filmmaker from a film a while ago called Soul Food. And this was this idea of um, not waiting for anyone to provide you an opportunity, but leveraging the resources and the tools that are around you. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today as well. It's really important to always extend yourself and try to learn from those that have been there and done it. That's a vitally important part of the process. But you never know who you're in a room with. You never know who you could potentially collaborate or work with that you may be going through school with, or learning with, or in a class with, a program with. That may be the individual that you want to connect with over the person that's potentially on stage. And so, this idea of creating don't wait means that you may have the resources right around you that you can use to bring things to life. And we're going to talk about some cool tools that are available that may have not been available a couple of years ago. So again, talking about this why behind why we create content, why an individual produces a short film, a music video, a podcast, a webinar, a series, a YouTube clip, or anything of that nature. As you can see, these are three completely different projects. I'll talk a little bit shortly about those, but the idea is that there's an audience for everything. One of the fears sometimes we have, as speakers or presenters or creators, is that people will not like what we've created, or that there is no audience, or no one's going to listen. Well, the truth is, you can't be everything for everyone. You will stretch yourself too thin. And so you want to make sure that you're staying true and authentic to yourself, because there is an audience for everything. And there's some new and innovative ways to bring your ideas to life. And so when we look at the slide that's here, we're seeing three completely different projects. At the top, a cartoon that's been a classic, SpongeBob, for some time. So whether your goal or ambition is to create something that's for growing kids, or animation projects, or whether it's to do a historical project about an amazing figure in American and world history, as in Martin Luther King here, or if it's to do a superhero sci-fi type film like Thor, which is actually one of my favorite characters. There's an audience for everything. So don't be afraid to speak your project, or bring your project to life, because you don't think that there's someone out there or a group of people out there for that. And with that being said, what I want to really start with here is just a brief reel of some of the things that I've been a part of within my organization, the Cipher. And you'll see it, we tap into a variety of spaces, and we'll talk a little bit about that next. So that reel was just an example of the variety of creative projects that we've been a part of: films, short and features, web series, podcasts, live events, music videos. And we briefly talked a little bit about my bio and how I started. Just wanted to give you a little bit more detail on that, and hopefully you can find some things that are applicable. Because I never thought that I'd be working in the entertainment industry. I never thought that I would be a producer. I really never thought I would be teaching a course on that. I started as an athlete. I played two sports in college and wound up blowing out my knee, had two knee surgeries, just really messed up. Injuries. And eventually, I met the gentleman in the bottom right hand corner and worked on a project years ago. And eventually, I got into the industry as a talent first, as a voice actor, meaning that I would do a voiceover for commercials, TV film projects, working as an on camera performer in projects like Chicago Fire, on stage. Went through Second City, which is an improv school in Chicago, and so I thought that the talent way was the direction for me. But this is what changed. There was one day I was staring at the phone, waiting for a casting director to select me for a project. And it just dawned on me that I no longer wanted to be in that position. I could not continue to wait for someone to say, yes, yes, we want you. Yes, we're going to give you an opportunity. And I realized that if I wanted those opportunities, I had to create those for myself. So my why initially was about creating opportunities for myself as a performer. My why was about not allowing uh, the idea of a lack of access to resources to hold me back from creating my own content. And eventually, I got elected to the Screen Actors Guild Board of Directors and several other boards after that point to start helping other filmmakers do the same thing. And long story short, built the organization Creative Cipher that's allowed me to work in a variety of spaces in the creative world. And so when I look at the three pictures down here, I pulled up three completely different creators, and I'm going to briefly talk about once again to show you that journeys can be totally different. So when we think about creating your project, whatever that may be, for the purposes of this slide, we're thinking of it as a film or a project that you're going to run like a mini company, a mini production company. And so your producer or the creator is usually involved in every facet of the project. So if you're at a higher level, a big time production, you typically have a large budget, a lot of resources to work with, big staff, big team, which means that it's not only that you are working with several resources, but now you have to manage a lot of people. And depending on the type of producer you are, means that you're going to be managing different things in that. But when you're starting out, like so many emerging artists are, you're doing everything. You're wearing every hat. You're finding the resources for the project. You're casting the project. You may be controlling the camera. You may be editing. You may be doing the music. You may be writing it. You may be doing everything. And I can't think of a better example of a person that built their career off of doing everything and then expanded other than Tyler Perry. When you think about his journey, starting with the stage plays, and he has an amazing story about the ups and downs of that process, all the way to then doing his films and then growing into a major studio and now a huge facility in Atlanta. He's an amazing example of an individual that built uh, his lane from scratch. And I would definitely suggest checking out his story. Again, whenever you feel down and out and then it may be difficult to move forward, look to those that have had a similar journey, and you can learn a lot of things. One of my favorite quotes is success leaves clues. Remember, there's no one way to do it, but success leaves clues. And so there are things that we can always learn from individuals. And as I mentioned, there are different types of producing, different types of producers. Producers can be on the creative side, meaning that they're coming up with the ideas. They're in the think tanks, they're in the brainstorming sessions, they're in the writing sessions. It can be more so on the logistics side, meaning getting the actual tangible resources together, the camera equipment, the crews, or what we call below the line, all of the things that make the project roll. But ultimately, it's all about problem solving. And one of the things that I learned as a filmmaker and as a producer is that a lot of those skills are transferable. So I know that there are a lot of students that are watching right now, and we've got a wide range. So you will a wide range in the audience. So you'll notice there's certain things that I may speak broadly on, and there's certain things that I may get very specific on, just so we can make it tangible for everybody that is potentially listening today. And so they're different types, but ultimately problem solving, learning how to think on the fly, improv, learning how to work with budgets, learning how to work with people. So filmmaking can be a great process to acquire skills that you can transfer to other things in life. And as I mentioned, these are three great examples of completely different creators. We talked a little bit about Tyler Perry. To the left, we have Shonda Rhimes, fellow Chicagoan, creator of a ton of amazing shows like Grey's Anatomy. She's got a deal with Netflix now, Scandal, a bunch of other shows on network television, and has her own lane. And then in the middle, we have a gentleman by the name of PewDiePie. Maybe some of the Gen Zers that may be listening will know him. This is a YouTube star. This guy is not in the lane of Tyler Perry. He's not in the lane of Shonda Rhimes. He does not, to my knowledge, create film or TV. He's a YouTube star, and he got really big from creating videos commentating on himself playing video games. So he would just play video games, video games, video games, and he would just talk about playing the video games. View that or record that and then put that on YouTube. Well, he knew his audience so well, he knew himself so well, he knew what he wanted to create so well, that he was able to start making almost $12 million a year off of just his YouTube videos playing video games online. And to some that may not be familiar with this, is that there are several individuals that have been able to monetize their YouTube careers in such a fashion. But for a long time, he was the top YouTube earner. For the content that he was putting together. There are other individuals that create YouTube content that have made money off of makeup tutorials and different types of reaction videos. So again, there's so many different ways to create and to create your own content. And but knowing yourself and knowing your audience and knowing your project or your product is so key to this. And you can check him out on YouTube, but he has done very well for himself, and he's had a less than traditional route in the content creating space. Um, and so we talk about there being different lanes. And the reason we say that is so that you never feel as though you're limited. As a creator, you never feel as though you're being held down or that you cannot bring what you want to bring to life. We want to hear your voice. We want to hear your authenticity. But then there's another huge component to this idea of creating your own content that we may not always think about. And actually in life, we may not always think about this notion in general. And that is our why. What is our purpose? What is our purpose behind um, creating content or behind whatever we do? And so we want to continue to speak on the idea that your voice really matters and it has the power to create change. And as it says, media can oftentimes influence our actions, how we interact with one another. And therefore, we shouldn't take that lightly when we're blessed with the opportunity to create. I not only wanted to put a presentation together about the logistics behind creating content, but also to speak on the bigger picture behind why we create stories, why we speak to the world, why we speak to an audience, and paying homage to an amazing creator, an amazing, talented individual who's brought us so many thought-provoking characters, Mr. Chadwick Boseman, that we lost not too long ago. And as you can see in the slides, he's brought some amazing stories to the screen with legendary Jackie Robinson at the top, Thurgood Marshall in the middle, and then a historic box office project with Black Panther. And one of the reasons that I put Black Panther there is that if there are a lot of students, younger students, they may be much more familiar with this character, but also that film did some amazing things in the world. For a long time, especially because there is this larger notion of race and healing that we're talking about. For a long time, creators, actors, talents were told that a Black lead or a Black main character would not sell like other mainstream performers. And so this was a project directed by Ryan Coogler, a young 30-year-old, I believe he was 32, 33 when he worked on this project, and wound up using $200 million and turned it into $1 billion pre-sale, which means that he not only made the money back, but he blew away the expectations before the project even came out. But more important than the dollar amount that was gained is that Black Panther completely shattered the stereotype that, or the notion that a Black project or a Black lead would not sell. The other thing that the project did creatively was spoke about I almost said Zamunda from Coming to America, which is coming out soon. Spoke about Wakanda, a land that the outside world thought was distraught and didn't have any resources. But if you watch the film, you saw that there was more than meets the eye. So there was a lot that was in there. So when we talk about our why, when we're creating, we're not only talking about the business side of it, because there is the business of show, but also what do you want to tell the world? Um, so this slide, briefly talks about knowing your brand and knowing your audience. One of the main things that I do outside of content creation is that I'm a speaker. I'm a public speaker, and I have to stand in front of stages and talk about a variety of things from time to time. And I really enjoy that. But a great speaker is a better listener, and they know their brand. And so when we talk about creating content, as I briefly mentioned before, it's knowing your audience, knowing your brand. What is it that you want the world to see from your story? What is it that you want to tell them? And then understanding who you are and your brand will help in that capacity. How many times have we potentially watched a project, seen a commercial, read something, heard something that was said, and wondered who was in the decision making process? A while ago, there was an ad that came out that had a young Black male for a fashion label in a rather derogatory hoodie, and it sent shockwaves, and the company wound up taking a big hit for that. But those that understand that creative process and the idea of the executive decisions that need to be made for something to actually make it out to the public then begin to question, well, who was in the room making the decision and were they paying attention to the audience? So when you create content, you also want to think about who's your audience? Who are you speaking to? Because there are a lot of very, very talented creators that unfortunately at times may create a project that doesn't do as well as they thought it would. And sometimes it's because of timing. How many times have we heard a comedian tell a joke that may have not been great timing? And then maybe 5, 10 years later, um, you may hear a similar joke and it works. And that just speaks to that individual's ability to read a room or to understand timing. And most importantly, understand the audience during that time. I believe we have some questions that are coming up. So I'm going to take a brief pause and just see if there are any.
We do, Troy.
Okay,
So
sure.
Angela is asking, do you get nervous when you're acting in videos or when you're speaking to the public?
Yes, I get more nervous when I'm speaking to the public. Well, acting in videos, this is one of the cool things about acting in videos is that you can take a break. Or in other words, someone can yell cut and you can start over again. So if I have lines that I need to memorize, or if I mess my lines up, or if I forget something, which is human, there's an opportunity for someone to say cut, and we can redo it. Now, uh, you work and work at it, because every time you say cut, then you have to restart and everybody around has to reset and redo it, do it over again. So you don't want to do it too often, but sometimes there's this thing, what we call it on stage at least, that there are no mistakes. They're all gifts. And in improv, it's like a moment that you can now do something with. So I'm much more nervous live than I am in front of a camera. And if you are as well, you're not alone. That speaking in front of an audience is actually rated the scariest thing for people to speak in front of an audience. So it can be a very frightening thing at times. But you know what? Like anything else, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it. And you don't have to compare yourself to anybody. You just go out there and you do your part. You do the best that you can do, and you stay consistent and you get better and better at that. And one of the things that helps to alleviate some of that fear in front of possibly in front of speaking is practicing and really, really thinking about the things that you want to talk about before you get up there.
Okay, so Bailey wants to know when you're ready to create content, what's the best way to get started? But before you answer that, I also have another question that's kind of similar to it. So when you're ready to get started, how do you do it? And then do you have to be a professional camera person to make and submit films, or can you do it on your cell phone?
So yes, you could do it on your cell phone. There are some amazing tools, and we have a slide about that later, and that allow you to create projects right on your cell phone. There have been commercials on television, and people didn't even know that they were shot on a cell phone. There have been full films that were shot on iPhones, and so that is a great way to create content. What was the? There was a question right before then.
So basically, like when you are creating content, what's the best way to get started?
So the best way to get started is to write your ideas down. As a creative, the creative process is ongoing. It's nonstop. You can write something down and think you got it, step away from it, come back to it, and then rethink it. So the best way to start is just to begin writing your ideas down. And then one of the things I always suggest is surround yourself with a cool team. So, it could be one other person, it could be somebody that you feed your ideas to, because it is a team game, and that helps you build on your project. But writing things down, you're 50% more likely to achieve whatever goal you have if you write it down. So if you write things down, that's going to help.
So, kind of in line with this, Angela wants to know how hard is it to start making your own videos and editing?
So hard can be relative. It depends on the tools that you have. Again, if you are using an iPhone or cell phone or whatever you have, you can pick up, click a button, and there's your video. It really depends on the type of video you want to create. There are a lot of really cool programs that you can download to your phone or to your computer that will help you. That'll help you with that process. But I always tell folks just start with what you have, because sometimes all you need is momentum. And what I mean by that is you don't have to climb the mountain from the very beginning. Sometimes if you just start, it gives you enough energy to keep going and you learn things as you grow. A lot of the things that I'm doing now, I may have not learned necessarily in a class, but because I kept going, I picked up a skill here, I picked up a skill there. You start to put it together, you start to create your content, and not only filming it, but editing that content as well. There are some tools that are already built into a lot of cell phones nowadays and on laptops that allow you to edit. There are certain apps that allow you to do that as well. So there are some really cool tools available to at least help you start.
Okay, so we have one more question, I think, with this round, and then I'll let you kind of get back to the presentation. So,
Okay.
Janisha asked a question that was specific to the contest. So, I wanted to let her know that we were intentionally vague on the how of the films because we want the students to be able to express themselves in any way they best can. But that said, Troy, do you have any tips on how they can balance words and images in film?
Sure. So if you're referring to like text on screen, okay. So, I would say you definitely, especially on screen, um, depending on what it is that you want to be projected to the audience, it's all about what you want them to pay attention to, what the priority is. In general, I like to have less text on screen while there's an image, because people's can it can be tough to read at times. So it really depends on what you want to focus on. So if you look at this presentation, a lot of times we have, a simple uh, bullet point, one or two bullet points, and then an image. So I can speak to the image, I can speak to the bullet point. And in video format, it can be the same way as well. As they say, a picture tells 1,000 words. So depending on what it is most important to you, I would focus on that. And then whatever is secondary, whether that's the text, maybe that's secondary, then I would make sure that I don't put too much on there, because if you have a video moving in the background, sometimes it can be hard to read text too. So if you look at this picture of this is actually Chris Rock. He has on a white jacket. If this was a video and I had the same text over this, if he moved, it would be hard to see that text. So it would blend out. So those are just some things to be aware of when you're putting both on screen at the same time.
That is great advice. Thank you, Troy. So we have a couple questions still, but I'm going to hold those for later to let you get back to the presentation.
All right. Thanks a lot. All right. Moving forward. Uh-oh. Cool. It is a process. And so this is what I talked about before. There's an idea of perfection is the enemy of consistency. So don't worry if it's not exactly how you want it to be right off the top. Don't be afraid to fail. That's a part of the process. Failure is not simply you not being good, not being able to make it, not being able to do it. It is a process. It just like an individual that's working out, getting stronger, we all hit a point where we have to take a break, we have to reassess, and then come back better. So it is a process. Even the most amazing projects that you can think of probably have scenes that didn't make the film. I can think of a ton of projects that I've been a part of, and I can look back and say, "Oh man, I'm so proud of that. That was great." Um, and then I look back at it and I say, oh, you know what? I could have done this. I could have changed this around. Even the presentation I'm giving you today, I guarantee you when I'm done with it, later today, I'm going to think about something else I could have said or a different way. It is a process. So don't be afraid to fail. And just sort of a quick bullet point here. As far as the process is concerned, you have an idea or a pitch, something that pops in your head. You put together an outline, which is what I mentioned in that question, the answer earlier, just jotting it down, giving yourself an outline, giving yourself a skeleton, something to work with, building out your script, and you can revise and what we say lock. And that's just a very, very streamlined process to take an idea all the way from it being in your head to writing it down, to fleshing out a script, revising it, and then confirming that you are completed with the project. So we talk about a game plan. This starts to get into a little bit more logistics of things. So when you're thinking about a project, again, depending on who may be listening, you're always considering what is the budget for the project and how many days are you going to shoot? Is this going to be a 1 day shoot? Is it going to be a week? Um, and your schedule equals your budget. So when you're thinking about how much you have to work with, the resources you have to work with, sometimes you have to get very creative. Can you shoot multiple things at the same location? Can you schedule it in a way where it's easier to film in a shorter amount of time? These are all things that you really work with your team on. Are there areas where you need to spend money, locations, sound, lighting, camera, lunch? People love to eat, so you got to feed everybody. And logistics, things like hard drives, depending on what you're filming on. Starting with your production plan. What's the schedule? What's the budget? How many people do you need on the project? The calendar for production. It is very cold outside right now, so it would be very difficult to film. So if you're going to film outside in the cold, what other equipment do you need? Coats and jackets to make sure people are safe. In the crazy COVID world, when things started to open back up, people had to think about PPE and protective equipment. So all of those things are things you have to think about as a producer, bringing something to life as well. And then, as I mentioned before, can you maximize one location? If you have a film where there are a kitchen scene and a living room scene, can you use one house to shoot both scenes without having to leave and go in different places with your crew? Who knows? It might be, it might be possible. And then when you are putting your team together, do you have a team of individuals that own their own equipment? So you may not have to go out and rent those things. We briefly talked about this earlier. There's some really cool tools that are out to create and share content. As we say, the costs are not as prohibitive, or in other words, it's not as expensive in the past. Making big budget projects is just that. It can be very, very expensive. But between our cell phones, social media, applications like Twitch, YouTube, different streaming platforms, these are all mediums that we can use to create content, but also showcase that content to the world. And of course, there's still network television and theaters. It'll be interesting to see how the theater world evolves with everything that's been going on. But those are some of the quick things to consider. If your project is not necessarily on TV or a theater, you can still pick up your phone, hit that record button, and start creating. And then you build on that. Now, here's an example of a slide that probably has too much text on it, but I'm going to briefly talk about the bullet points here and then open it back up. So here's some quick do's and don'ts, because I feel like there's probably a lot of folks that may want to just use their phones for creating content. So you want to make sure you have good lighting. Good lighting can really make the difference between how your project may appear on camera and not may appear on camera. So think about your lighting, and you can always play around and test that out. Sound is extremely important. I've seen plenty of videos where they have the video down, the video looks good, but if the audio is off, it can make for a tough viewer experience. So you want to treat your audio as important. It's a very important thing. And if you're using your phone, one of the things that can be challenging at times is that we can be very shaky. Very shaky. I'm shaking my laptop here. That can be tough to watch as a viewer. So again, when we're thinking about our viewers, when we're thinking about our audience, we also think about the things that we do to make sure that our project or the quality of our project is up to par. And so a shaky video can be tough. Now, so that's something to definitely think about. Maybe using a tripod, setting your phone up, or setting whatever your camera up is probably a good way to work on that. Um, some of the things that you want to be careful of is the vertical format. Depending on where you want your video to live, oftentimes you want to film horizontally or landscape, because oftentimes that's a better way to film something on your phone and then upload it, because a lot of the uploading software or streaming platforms or devices really show things in that sort of panoramic or horizontal view. And so if you film it vertically, a lot of times it doesn't carry over, and you get those black boxes on the side, and your video may be cut out. So that's something to be aware of. You also want to make sure, if you're using your phone, remember your phone, you may not have the benefit of having boom mics and all kinds of equipment. So you don't want to be too far away. If you're too far away, can't hear you, and the video may be off a little bit. And then, of course, here's a little nuance. Earlier, I said you want to make sure that your phone is steady. Well, sometimes a little movement actually helps, and it keeps your viewer engaged. If you ever watch YouTube, a lot of times they have commercials where a person is talking, but they're walking. And so you see the background moving in a way. So that's just a little trick that a lot of folks have used to keep people engaged. And then as we come to the coming closer to the end of the presentation, I always talk about, teamwork makes the dream work. You don't have to do it all by yourself. It's I've worn many hats. I've done a lot of it by myself, and as emerging artists, a lot of times we'll do that. But if you can, and if you have the opportunity, you definitely want to build a team of individuals that can help you in areas that you may struggle in. I know that as I grow in the industry, you can't do it all. So you need other people that are around you that can help. And you never know what resources are available right around you that can help you build your project. And those are things that, understanding it is really key. The creative process, having other people on your team to give you opinions on things, like when we talked about writing your ideas down, being able to step away from them, handing them to somebody else, and hey, what do you think about this? What are your thoughts on this? Because you never know what someone else could help you or inspire you. And we all play a role. So I put, you know, two of the greatest basketball players of all time. I'll let you decide who the greatest is. And I'll just say, hey, I'm from Chicago, so the Bulls picture is a little bit bigger. But I'm a LeBron fan. But the point is, the greatness of LeBron James and Michael Jordan is one thing, but they would not have won their championships if it wasn't for the amazing teams that they had around them. As we come to a close, I'm just going to show you a quick clip of a project I did a while ago, and I'm going to speed through this because I know we are coming up on time. And I just wanted to mention that there were, just a few things in here. So if you can hear me, we did this project filming around Chicago, filming the L. Now, the reason I showed that was because we used what was already available to us. We were able to get, permission to film in certain areas, but we didn't have to go find, these things. They were already present. Fast forwarding, two amazing actors, Tyrone Phillips, who runs Definition Theater in Chicago, and Cedric Young, who's the gentleman to the right, actually a mentor of mine. This next scene is being filmed in a cafe
I don't
that's in
call him
Hyde
dad.
Park. And so I just use this as an example of we had a friend that had a cafe. So instead of us having to go find one, you never know. Ask your parents, ask your friends, ask folks around who may have resources available to you.
How about the
And
All-American Steak Bowl?
the
One of those.
lovely waitress right
All right.
here
Thanks,
just
man.
happens to be my wife. So I work with individuals that were already in my circle, that already had access to resources, and we were able to film this project called Intersection in one day with the equipment that we had available to us, and won a couple of awards. But after filming that project, it proved to me that we had a model that we could replicate. And this was a short film, less than 8 minutes, with only two locations. And we were able to move forward with that project and then use that same model in other projects. So, little homework for you. You're going to start with writing your ideas down, share those ideas with like minded creators. Always remain a student. Remember, we're never done learning, no matter how big you get in the industry or whatever your industry is. You're always learning. Use those resources that are around you, and remember that it's a process. So you just take one step at a time. This is some of my contact information. So if you ever have any questions, you can follow on social media, check out what we're doing. Um, Happy to keep everybody in the loop. And I think we have some questions.
We do. So, since most of our participants won't be working with professional actors, if they're using friends or family as characters, do you have any advice for how they can prep or direct them?
Sure. So, sometimes it can be a challenge, if you don't have professional actors. The first thing I would say is we always have to be kind. If individuals if it's not their skill set, then we should be aware that, in other words, manage our expectations. If our cousin is not Denzel or Leonardo DiCaprio and we put them in our project, then understand that they're learning as well. And so you want to give yourself enough time to actually to bring that project to life, and give a little grace to those that may not be professional in that space.
So, Janisha wants to know, when you write your ideas down, do you ever go back and change them based on what you think people will want to watch? And what do you do with those ideas that maybe don't work right now?
So The answer can be yes. There have been plenty of times when projects have come out, and depending on something that goes on in the world or something that's happened in the world, a creator has to go back and readjust, maybe pull something out, maybe something was phrased in a way that is not sensitive to the times. So this goes back to one of our original points of knowing our audience and timing. So there are plenty of times that you rethink some things and go back, and that is, speaks to this idea of the creative process. It's ongoing. You will always think of ways to adjust and adapt.
So, kind of in line with that, Cheryl's curious about what are some of the ways that our participants might use to test out potential audience reactions?
So, you know, one of the things that I've seen for filmmakers that have a goal of doing a web series or doing a feature film is they may do a sizzle reel, which is a small version of a project. It could be one or two scenes. They may do a short film and put it into a screening event just to see how the audience responds, to see if it's something that they would like to see more of. I've seen plenty of short films, and in the Q&A, someone says, hey, is this going to be a feature, or is there a part two, or is there a part three, or is there, what else happens to that character after this? So that's one way that I've seen it. I've also seen it where the individuals don't film anything and they do what's called a table read or a stage read. So let's say you have a script and you have a couple of maybe actors in a safe post-COVID space, um, where you can invite your family, your friends to come out and just listen to the script and listen to individuals read it out. And it gives you an idea of how people respond to what you've created, because you may reword something, you may switch a character around, and just gives you some insight. And those are a couple of ways that people do what we consider somewhat like market research of their projects.
Joy, really fast, could I ask you to stop screen sharing? They'd like to see your
Oh,
face.
sorry.
We got a note. Can we see him? So Haley has a question. Would it be better for the sound quality for them to
Uh-oh.
record video and audio separately?
Okay, I think I'm back.
You are.
Okay. Can you repeat that one?
Absolutely. Haley's curious if it would be better for sound quality to record video and audio separately.
It depends. And there's something called ADR that's oftentimes used if you're filming outside. And let's say there's, for example, the project that I just showed you, or a clip of the project, because we filmed outside and you had the L and you had the street traffic and a lot of things, we actually went back into a studio later and did what's called ADR, and it allows you to re-record the audio so that when you put the video together, you can hear it clearly, you can see it clearly. Um, so it really depends on the quality that you get from that, and often that's used very often, where you will film something and then you will record the dialogue later on. But you don't always have to do that.
Perfect. So we have a great question from Sarah. They would like to know if you have any advice on how to find and then connect with resources and mentors, and what should these conversations look like?
Sure. So I always suggest that everyone should have a mentor and be a mentor if that is available to you. I would start with your schools first. I know that s- certain schools have different resources, but if there's an arts and education program, or if there are any art teachers or theaters or anything of that nature, I would start there. Those are some resources. I would look at if there are any local theaters or acting studios that are in your town. Oftentimes, the lines are very blurred, so you'll find resources from either. You can go to an acting studio and learn about things that are going on at a theater, and learn about things that are going on. A lot of times they have postings there. You can go online and see if there are any resources that are available. There's some really cool organizations I know of in Chicago, like Free Spirit Media, which is a great youth-focused media organization. There's another one called True Star. So I would check them out, and whether you're in Chicago or not, I think they're a great resource just to check out and research, look up, and there are a plethora of those. You can go on Google and just look up media or mentor organizations. I know that there are a lot of institutions that have youth programs. So that's something to consider as well. And, if you find an individual that you really take a liking to and you want to learn from them, I would say, it's probably the easiest way to do nowadays is to find them on social media and send them a brief but nice note. Just, letting them know that if there's a way to communicate, if they have a manager, or ask them if they're part of any mentoring programs. That could be a method to doing that. But there's no one way. But just being cordial and connecting with folks when you have the opportunity is the best way for that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So we had a couple of questions come in that were logistical. And so one of them wanted to know if racial healing is only limited to American society. With that one, the answer is no, it's not. The topic that we listed was racial healing. And so that one is 100% up to your interpretation. And then as far as how long the short film can be, the rules state that if you are filming a short film, it's 3 to 7 minutes, or if it's an animation, it needs to be at least 45 seconds. So we do have one last question for you, Troy, and then I think we can wrap up. Mamouche wants to know, what are your favorite editing or software apps, like softwares or apps?
So I'll let you know that typically when I work on a project, there's an editor, someone who specializes in those areas. I'm not I would never put editing on my resume, but I have learned a few skills. I have a 7-month-old that is wide awake and jumping around right now, so you may hear something in the background. I call him, he's my manager now. But I have used just iMovie on a Mac, and this is, it's just actually an example of teamwork. Oftentimes I'll go on my computer and do what I can with what I have, and then go to an editor to polish things up, or just try to make their lives a little bit easier. I have my notes laid out very specific to make sure that they can perform at the highest level without having to do a whole lot of guesswork. I've used Final Cut in the past. I've learned that to a degree. Again, I'll never call myself an expert in the editing space. I built the teams to build, but those are some really cool tools. I've been in editing sessions where Premiere has been used in Adobe, but ultimately, whatever product gives you the highest quality in the most efficient way, what works for you is going to be the best thing. So if you have the opportunity to test those out, or if you find something that really works for you, I would stick with that if it helps you bring your projects to life.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that advice. And Troy, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today and sharing your
And before we go, I have to come back because I have to tell you, Troy, that was excellent. Thank you so much. I wanted you to be the first one to give the overall, because I know that you have a passion for what you do. And I know that you are helping so many people in the community and in the entertainment community, so many people who didn't have an opportunity to actually be part of the entertainment community. You encourage and inspire them. And I think that I like the way that you communicate, and you really respect your audience. And so you know that this contest is open to people from ages 11 to 21. And I think you communicated on a level that everyone understood. And it's, I enjoyed it. You inspired me. I can't enter the contest, but you inspired me to perhaps make a movie. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for listening, and hopefully I gave you all a few gems that you can use.
Perfect. Thank you everyone for joining us today for Create, Don't Wait. Before we end the webinar, I'd like to remind you that we'll be doing expert sessions on Saturdays at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time through March 6th. Next week, you'll learn from Rita Coburn in her presentation, Directing the Storyteller. Before Rita's session, we're truly excited to offer a free screening of Maya Angelou and Still I Rise, a film co-directed and co-produced by Rita. We'd love to see you there this Thursday, February 11th, and then again in her webinar on Saturday, February 13th. To register for any of the expert sessions or for the Maya Angelou screening, be sure to go to the contest website at bit.ly/No Malice Film Contest, which I put a link in the chat. If you miss any sessions, we'll be posting the recordings to the site a few days after each one, so you can catch up or rewatch them for help. One last thing before you go, please shoot me, Heather Nice, a chat telling me where you're watching from and how many people are watching with you, so we get a good count for today's program. Thank you again for spending your Saturday morning with us, and we do hope to see you next weekend.